Hello, everybody. My name is Oliver Bass, and I'm joined by none other than Pyro J, and this is the esports.net Rocket League show. It's been a while since we've actually been on the same screen here today, but today we are discussing Team Vitality. They are by far the hottest team on the planet right now. Everybody is talking about them, and Pyro, it is very much so for a good reason.
Very good reason, yeah, and good reason for us to be back together again, Bass. Been too long, so let's banter a bit, and who better to do it here for Team Vitality. Listen, we got to start with how they sort of started in the season, right? You got Alpha, you got Rado, you got Sizen, and Bass, maybe you kicked that off because a couple of those players you had been casting before they started with Vitality.
So this team's actually been around for a while, or at least the duo of Radisson and Sizen, or Rado, or however you want to pronounce it, has been around since Atlantide Wave. And after they became Atlantide Wave, they actually went under a team named Williams Resolve. You guys have probably heard me talk about them on the show a couple of times before due to the fact that I worked for this team. I work for them very closely on top of that, and they are very much an organization that has been looking for talent for a long time and knew these guys were on the way up well before a lot of other people did. The team did okay as Williams Resolve, eventually breaking up due to some internal issues, but then eventually they team back up with Alpha 54, all of a sudden find themselves under the new Vitality roster name, and not only are they able to find themselves a resurgence in this 22-23 season, they made it to the Winter Major, Pyro. They were not only able to make it to the Winter Major, they took a 5th to 8th place, meaning they finished in the top 8. So this is a team that was already good before their current iteration, where arguably they might be the best team on the planet.
Right. And let's sit on the major for a second, because the storyline there is so interesting. You have a player of Zen, who we'll get to, who's going to be inserted on the roster one way or another. So you have 3 players at the international major kind of playing for their spot. Maybe it was known beforehand that Sizen was going to be removed for Zen, but to have kind of that extra motivation to pop off at the major, and even at the very least, if you're going to be substituted out on the team, to at least show people what you're capable of for maybe the next team you'll be on, there's so much on the line. So the story for Team Vitality in that major and performing 5th to 8th in that international performance was really cool to watch. So exciting. But now, Bass, we talk about the new Team Vitality. Yes, they busted people's chops in the first couple of splits, but now in the spring split, you really couldn't ask for a better team in EU.
Honestly, right now, this might be the most dominant team on the planet, like I've stated a couple of times already here. And it's not just due to the fact that the team was already in form, but it's due to the fact that they insert Zen, arguably the largest prodigy of this year, probably might be the largest prodigy we will see in a little while. This guy has already revolutionized the game. Before he even touched RLCS, he was a hot topic due to his ones play being one of the most dominant players on the planet in one-show matches between Johnny Boy and Fear. The only loss I believe he ever actually took was to Roas, a Middle Eastern player who did fantastic against him, but was also very reputable within ones. And I will say this much, he hasn't necessarily left the impact Zen has, though, as soon as he touched RLCS. Rule 1 with Roas, pretty good. Zen with Vitality have found 2 back-to-back regional wins within Europe. It is one of the most dominant starts we have ever seen out of a team. Honestly, the only player I can think of, at least within the last couple of years, that has had this type of impact has been Seiko. And Seiko went on to win the world championship with BDS. So I think you guys can understand what we say when the fact that he's slotted into an already good Vitality roster and made them great is already showing that he's got a legacy that is going to be written for many years to come.
Hold on, because if Seiko had just as much of a splash in their RLCS debut, have we discovered the true hack to entering RLCS, Bass? Because Seiko had the same 1-year ban as Zen did before he entered the RLCS season. So, folks, if you're a young and up and coming talent, get banned for a year. No, please don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, Zen entering, splashing in the scene at 16 years old after serving his ban. I agree, indisputable performance that meets any expectation anyone could have set. Because having the pressure of being called a prodigy and then entering the 3 scene after a lot of people are, cooking you up for your ones performance is a lot of pressure, because most critics are going to argue, oh, it's not like that translates in 3s. Oh, you expect him to perform well in RLCS, especially against the likes of the reigning major champions, Carmine Corp? Yeah, okay, good luck. Well, they didn't need luck. First place once, first place twice. Again, Bass, it's just indisputable. They were better. Zen's entry into this team vitality couldn't look better.
And they honestly look better in every single regard. Rotationally, this team is on point. Their individual mechanics are all on point. And the thing I think that is probably the scariest about Vitality is that Zen might not even be their best player right now. He's looking fantastic. He is utilized in all the right ways. He is putting in his mark in every play. But he's not even statistical leader for that team. Every single player on that team is stepping up bid. They ended up going with Radisson over Sizen to keep him on the roster going into this next split and into the World Championship, like we mentioned before. And he has stepped up in more ways than we can even count. Statistically, like I said, just an absolute phenomenon on and off the pitch. He has been a huge piece of this Vitality puzzle. And I think a lot of people are starting to, have less concerns for this team. The initial concern was going to be the chemistry. The initial concern was going to be how do they respond after finding themselves in a little bit of, I think what was not actually a drought, but was expected to be a drought. They were going to find some resistance, find teams in EU that were going to play them a little bit harder than maybe what Zen had been used to before he had been in RLCS. They've kind of, I would say, quelled most of those concerns. I don't think they're really as prevalent right now as they might have been prior to his initial entrance in RLCS, but people still are concerned. This team has set themselves a very high bar. If they fall underneath it, the questions are really how do they recover, especially considering they've still got 2 lands to go. They've got the Spring Major, and then after that, they still got to do it all over again in Dusseldorf for the World Championship.
And that looming question still is there, Bass, because what we know is that, yes, Zen and this team vitality as a whole can perform really well in EU. And, there's plenty of people who will say EU right now is presenting the best of what professional Rocket League you can ask for. Yet, still, there are different playstyles that come with different regions. North America itself is an amalgamation of multiple regions with teams like Complexity, Furia, Genji, etc. So you see Team Vitality go up against those other teams, and maybe you're not touting them to be as good as Team Vitality, but guess what? They're different, and that could pose challenges to someone, again, entering the professional scene, used to playing an EU playstyle that could get shaken up as we go further. You never really know until you see it. You never really know until you see the LAN performance, until you see Team Vitality play up against different regions. So while there is the most success you could ask for this new Team Vitality squad, Bass, they haven't proven everything.
I mean, listen, it's the most success you could ask for with a little asterisk of they've yet to even be able to play a LAN with this roster. They don't have the option. The first option that they do have is being able to make that Boston Major coming up for the end of the spring split, which, if they continue the way that they are right now, they're probably going to be at that major and most likely come into it the #1 seed globally. So this is going to be a pretty big test here for Vitality, that they have to show that they can do this on LAN in comparison to just an online roster, because we have seen this in times past where teams have done really well online, and then when it gets to them in person, they don't necessarily show the same level of success. I don't know if I necessarily believe this is going to be the same for Vitality. I think that this team has kind of shown every hurdle in front of them and just kind of overtaken them without a second thought. But I do think that they also have to be aware that the rest of the planet is also in absolute turmoil right now when it comes to the Rocket League world. North America is more competitive than it has ever been, with a top 10 that is just full of wishy-washy players who, on their best days, look like they could take down everyone, and on their worst days, they're finishing bottom of the pack. So they got to be aware that coming into this, they're going to have a lot of competition in Boston, but that's really all we can do at this point is speculate, because we know that this team at this point, with 2 back-to-back regional wins, should be on track to get there. They've shown themselves to be good. They've shown themselves to be great. The big question is how they do that on an international stage when it comes to an offline play.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of questions are answered for me, especially because not only has Team Vitality taken those 2 regional wins, but they also got bracket reset by Carmine Corps in that grand finals, and then bounced back in dominant fashion to close the bracket reset, complete the grand finals, and win it. We've seen that they can take challenges and beat those hurdles, like you mentioned, Bass. But yeah, it all comes down to how they perform internationally. I have one kind of final question for you. I'm curious on your take on this, Bass. We've talked about so many strengths about this team and Team Vitality, right? We know what even Alpha 54 brings to the table. I think that we haven't even talked so much about, so mechanical and so strong, even defensively. I watched that grand finals and saw some insane saves, even pitches off his own goalpost to get this ball out of the zone. Are there any weaknesses in this Team Vitality squad. Maybe something that us NA copiumers could hope for when they go up against Team Vitality at the major.
The biggest thing you can talk about is the lack of experience here. Again, Radisson on his first LAN ever was San Diego. On top of that, Zen has yet to play on a LAN outside of national competitions within France, where he is from. So if there's anything, it's the fact that they are young. They may not know what the pressure is going to be like on a LAN stage. They may not know how to play. You've seen this out of teams in the past who, I think a really good example of that was people talking about, Sandrock Gaming, now Team Falcons, a team that they really expected to come on the LAN and to do absolutely phenomenally, and all of a sudden they find themselves with one good result out of the multitude of LANs now that they've participated in. So it's one of these things where you do need to be prepared. LAN is a very different environment. Zen is not necessarily all that veteran within LAN experience, so take a step back and realize that this team is still going to have some young blood on them that they need to try and work around. If anything, that is going to be their biggest thing, is that we've even heard teams talk about this. When you face Furia for the first time on LAN or any of those South American teams, you are not expecting them to dive on every play, and they still will, and they will take any of you by surprise. So all we can really do at this point, though, is sit and wait. We have to figure out how are Vitality going to do coming into the end of this split, into the Spring Major, and into the World Championship. Let us know what you guys think about that one. Give us in the comments below a little bit of your opinions about how you think Vitality are going to do coming forward. And, well, we'll see you guys next time. That's all that we've got today for today's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for even more next week. My name is Oliver Bastro, alongside by Pyro J, and this has been the esports.net Rocket League Show. Have a good one.